I guess there's no need to introduce Abigail and Wu Fei. I should just point out that I usually write and edit stuff about Chinese current affairs and politics and business. Sometimes it's my great joy to be able to write about culture. And I also should disclose that I have been friends with both Abigail and Wu Fei for many, many years. And I am in fact married to Wu Fei. So I'm not a completely impartial interviewer. But as you know, they came together recently to make this album titled Wu Fei and Abigail Washburn, which they're also going to play from. The album was produced by Banjo master Bela Flack and was released on Smithsonian Folkways Recordings, and it's available on all the usual platforms. So, Faye and Abby, why don't we stop talking and listen to some music?
All right. Okay. I'll start.
Beautiful. So we have already a bunch of questions. I can see we're going to have a very engaged audience. I wish, we could have the feeling of a live concert, but just so you know, I'm looking at what's going on in the audience and everybody's really engaged, Faye and Abby. I'm going to ask you about your instruments, but firstly, what did you all just play?
I started the piece called the Busy Weaving, 纺织忙. It's a traditional piece from the Guangdong province, from southern coast of China. So it's busy weaving, like all the old time women have those weaving wooden machines that called the 纺织忙. Yeah, that's and then yeah, Abby.
And actually we call this tune on our record, the Smithsonian record, the Weaving Medley, because we're literally weaving these tunes together. You don't hear it right here because of the limitations of Zoom sonically, but after playing each piece, we play them together and they weave together, and it's this beautiful organic counterpoint that happens. So I play next also from a coastal region of North Carolina, a tune called Julianne Johnson. Julianne Johnson, that name is attributed to many wonderful tunes in the Appalachian string band tradition. This Julianne Johnson is the coastal version. It's the laid back, beachy version. And then Faye played.
And then I played another tune from Hunan province, 小开手, which is actually literally means little open hand. It's a warm-up tune to usually start a whole night of recital or concert or show. So it's also part of the weaving medley.
And then I finished with also an equally, hopefully, robust and forward-leaning tune called Backstep Cindy. And Backstep Cindy is a tune I learned also from the North Carolina region, from my teacher, who really got me started in the tradition of clawhammer, round peak style clawhammer bit playing on my banjo. And so that's what you heard in that tune, was a very forward-leaning round peak tune called Backstep Cindy.
Abby, can you talk about the banjo a little bit? Pretend I'm from Mars. What is the banjo?
Yeah, man. Okay, Jeremy, alien Jeremy. The banjo is, I saw in the Google Doc that you sent before we did all this that we're allowed to nerd out on our instrument at this point.
I think we have some nerds in the crowd judging the questions. So I think you can nerd
Hello,
out.
nerds. So glad to be with you. There are many forms. Since we have people from all over the world, you probably are familiar with banjo music, but there are many forms of banjo music in America. The important thing to know is that the banjo really originally came to America on the slave ships, in the hands of oppressed African prisoners who were being brought to America to be made into enslaved people. So they brought with them their banjos because the slave masters on the ships realized, after taking a few loads of people on the ship to become slaves, that they died quickly on the ship because they were treated horribly and stacked in layers without food or drink for 2 to 2.5 weeks. But they realized that if they brought a musician playing their instrument along on the ships, that more of the souls would stay intact with the body and survive to the other side. And so that's why in a lot of cases, the banjo, which is thought to be native to Gambia. In fact, the capital of Gambia is Banjul, and it was made from the original banjos were made from the banjolo tree. So it's definitely an instrument that is derived from West Africa and came to America, although a lot of white men tried to take ownership over the invention of the instrument, but in fact, it's an African instrument, West African instrument. The way it's been sort of adapted in America is it just as America is a very diverse place with so many different cultural heritages. Down in Louisiana, it became Dixieland banjo. In the Delta, there was blues banjo. all throughout Appalachia, both white and black people were playing string band music on it. And then in the North, there's more of a melodic style that emerged on the banjo. And I am more connected to the Appalachian string band tradition that arose in the Middle Appalachians, like the Mid-Atlantic down through Georgia, and North Carolina traditions, heavily influenced by that. So in Tennessee, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So there is another kind of banjo picking, which my husband, who's Bela Fleck, is a great bluegrass or three-finger banjo picker. And that style really emerged with the emergence of Earl Scruggs in the late 40s, when there was a need for the sound of the banjo to adapt to radio playing. And that machine gun-like, very loud forward sound of bluegrass three-finger roll that Earl Scruggs created, and really became that style in the late 40s. So the style I'm really connected to is this Appalachian tradition, going all the way back to what came off the music that came off the slave ships. So everything from Georgia Sea Islands to North Carolina mountain tunes. And the banjo itself is 5 strings. And what makes it really special and really clear that it's connected to its ancestors in West Africa is this short string, which we also call the drone string or the 5th string. And it's being played continually. And so everything that's played on the banjo melodically is set against the backdrop of this drone string. I play clawhammer banjo. There are many forms and ways of people playing clawhammer or frailing banjo. A lot of the technique has to do with holding your hand in a claw-like fashion, and the real energy of the strike down on the strings comes from the whole arm, and the claw moves back and forth like a hammer. So that's why it's called claw hammer. It's not the individual movement of the fingers, it's the entire movement of the whole arm that gives its energy and its drive. So in the case of the style that I play very specifically, I do play different styles, but I use a lot of the round peak tradition tools in my playing. And there is a separation of the 2 fingers, the index and the middle, to strike the last 2 strings and create melodies. So my basic roll is a strike with my index finger on the 2nd string, then a strike with my middle finger on the 1st string. And then the really exciting part that you will see in Gambia when you watch the Jada family play even today is a pull off on the 1st string after striking it. And then a pull off on the drone string. So it adds up to sound like this. And then you can start dropping your fingers to create melody. I'll stop there for now. There's way more I could nerd out on, but maybe somebody will ask a geeky question that I can get excited about at the end.
Thank you, Abby. Faye, I mean, you play a very different instrument, so perhaps you could answer the same question. And I'll just add one that we have from the Q&A, which is somebody has asked about the relationship of the guzheng to the koto.
Yes, the guzheng it's traditionally, from China, with about 2,500 years of history, at least. The earliest guzheng score may have been at least 2,200 years old. The score is the oldest score is that old, so the instrument must be much older than that. So, and then the one that you are looking at actually is so long that my Zoom camera can't cover the whole thing. It's about 5 feet 5 in length and has 21 strings. it covers 4 octaves, and from low D to high D. And it just repeats. And then this is the most contemporary version of guzheng you see in the world, and primarily in China and lots of parts of Asia. And it was much smaller. There's 2 versions. There was saying version of it was much smaller from 2,500 years ago, and then there was also another version. It was double the size from 2,500 years ago. It became too difficult to travel around, so they chopped it off in half, and so it became the current guzheng. So, which is really interesting. I've been reading about which theory actually I should even look into more. And all over Asia, there's because the history of the Asian zither is so long, it has many cousin versions all throughout Asia. The koto, they're completely related. Basically, I think a koto during the Tang or pre-Tang dynasty, Japan sent a lot of scholars and students to China to study. There's a lot of exchange, cultural exchange.
Hey, I'm just going to interrupt for a second and ask if you could turn your volume up a little bit or bring your mic a little closer in.
Oh yeah, like this? Like this?
Much better.
Can I? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, and so in Japan, so they're completely related, and but the koto, I believe that when it arrived in Japan, also the biwa, which is the Chinese pipa, when they arrived in Japan, the Japanese people didn't change it much. So what you are actually looking at the koto, it might look exactly the same of the Chinese guzheng from 1,500 years ago. And it still has silks. I have studied actually koto from Kazuo Sawai, Maestro Kazuo Sawai. And the koto has only silk string, so it's all silk wrap. And the guzheng has been developed much rapidly. Also, similar to the 3-finger picking banjo. To basically in the contemporary China, guzheng players wanted to play with symphony orchestra or a bigger stage. So, the contemporary strings has a steel wire inside and a nylon wrap outside. Therefore, the contemporary guzheng sounds much more resonant and bigger sound. And we wear finger picks. Sometimes they are plastic, sometimes they are tortoise shell, sometimes they are horn. But in koto musicians uses ivory pick that's like really thick. So the more action is on the wrist, like more of like like that kind of plucking. Also more finger picks, but the distinguished sound is more of a, to my ears, tougher. And the guzheng picks, we're wearing them with just regular medical, almost like Band-Aid tape that's tightly attached on our fingers. So we could pluck much faster and lighter. The least come up with other material to replace the tape, because the tape is so tight and sticky and weightless. So we could do a lot of 4-finger plucking. And then the bending on the left-hand side, on the other side of the bridge, to create the vibrato or the bending. So that's the brief about guzheng. And there, in Korea, there's also the kayakam, and in Vietnam, the dan tram. They're all related. There's also the Malaysian, Indonesian version of the zither and the Mongolian version of the zither, and all have these bridges underneath, the movable bridges under each string, so we could change. And then we instantly changed the scale from a D major pentatonic to a G major pentatonic. And then on this side, there's like a little box we could use hammer tuner to change the strings even in a more dramatic intervals, to change to like a, detune it to atonal or tritone or chromatic or microtones, but the koto still to this day, they do not have this side with the tuning hammer. So if you change pitches or anything, you have to pull with your hand if to change the pitches.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to play a little bit more in a bit, but before you do that, we have quite a few questions asking how you came to collaborate and how you came to choose the music that is on your album, and how you chose to fuse, the two traditions, the tradition drawn from the South of the United States, and then Faye's classical Western and Chinese traditional background. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that first. How did the project come to be, and how do these very, very different traditions end up sounding so good together?
Well, thanks, first of all, for saying we sound good together, or the traditions do at least. Thank you. I will just start by saying that Faye and I have been friends for a long time now. And I don't know that in the beginning of our friendship, we knew or thought we would end up being close collaborators like this. And I'm so grateful we have become. But our lives just fell into sort of parallel experiences of epic life events that brought us closer and closer throughout the years, even though it was over email. But certainly both of us being women, pursuing a career in music, playing traditional instruments was a draw to each other. And it was the reason that our friend Nick Forrester of E-Town out in Boulder, Colorado, wanted us to meet each other. So he totally set us up on our first date. And Faye, we both trusted him. And Faye came out to a little schoolhouse where I was playing with the Sparrow Quartet and sat in with us playing some real simple traditional Chinese songs. And we had a blast, and we gave each other our email addresses. And just from there, we followed each other. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you living? Where are you on tour? And I visited her in New York. And then when she moved there, and then when she was in Beijing, living back in Beijing again, I got to go there and visit with her. I got to meet her parents in Beijing before she moved back. I had a sleepover with them. It was very cute.
Yeah, it was. I actually, exactly. We had no plan to actually even do an album from back then. We just felt like, oh wow, let's play music together. I just like, wow, is this musician knows the songs that I grew up listening as a child. I had been living in the States for 5-6 years, doing music, and had also branched out to different genres, or jazz, or rock, or avant-garde, or classical was my upbringing, so I wasn't particular wanting to go back to classical at the time. And I knew I was in America, and I was living in Colorado. The American folk tradition was very strong there. There's so many bluegrass bands and folk festivals. I was really drawn to the sound that was just I was surrounded by, and that also was a big part of American culture, American music culture, that I was very, very fascinated and in love with. So of course there was just amazing musicians when I met Abby, and among these amazing musicians, Abby sings the Sichuan folk song and 太阳出来喜洋洋 and 康定情歌. I was like, ooh, wow, I don't have to rehearse. That's great, but no. And so we just hit it off right away, and then our curiosity to each other's culture, and also our own adventure, we didn't form like a project right away. Just like, all right, we'll just go with the flow. I was kind of wild and wanting to check out other places. So was Abby. But yeah, but we always felt, and then I moved to New York, and Abby, yeah, like, and our life path now, me and Jeremy, we live in Nashville after we became parents. We lived in Beijing together as a family for 5 years. Both our children were born there, and then Abby's first son was born during that time as well. So we moved to Nashville. I was like, hey, time to keep exploring. Now, two babies are undone, and let's get back to our first.
Okay, I'm going to invoke moderator's privilege, also as your husband. Enough about our family life. So we've established you guys were great friends, and you play together a little bit. But what was the thing that caused you to make this record, and why did you choose the music that went into this record? Okay.
I was gonna. So after we became first-time mothers, and of course, trying to hold a music career and trying to be mothers, who we both had infants, who we needed to breastfeed, and we wanted to play music. We knew it, and so we were hanging out at Abby's house in the middle of summer, and then just feeling really frustrated about putting our babies to sleep. And then Abby, you can tell the rest of the story.
So and this has been a pattern where we'll hire a babysitter to take care of the kids, and we'll sit on the porch or go into a room and just tell each other stories and sing songs to each other. And that's really how it started. I mean, although we did do a duo show in Beijing. Remember that years back at Capital M?
Capital M.
Yeah. Yeah, so we did there was a precedence of us performing live together, and then we had a little band called the Woo Force that sort of got us on a roll, collaborating on really weird out there music. And then when Faye and Jeremy and Vivi moved to Nashville, we were, it was natural to just keep sharing music with each other. And so we were definitely talking about, how do you get your infant to go to sleep at night? Is there a song that works, So,
yeah.
So I started
exchanging lullabies. Yes.
Yeah. And Faye, started hearing a song in her head. I was singing The Water is Wide, the beautiful Scotch Irish oral tradition song that's been handed down through centuries, and has made its way into the canon of American traditional folk music. And Faye heard this song in her head that reminded her of the water.
Yeah. And then after this song two songs came together, which we'll sing it to you in this live Zoom version, but they're also weaved tightly together on the record, about motherhood and then water and then the energy and then the connection. The water connects the whole world. And yeah.
I just before you start playing, I've just been slightly scolded by one person in the audience, an anonymous attendee, who says, to a man, the mother part of the story is not appropriate, but to the woman in the audience, it is relevant. So there we go.
Yeah, I hear you. Power to the mamas. Power to the mamas.
Yeah. So hey, that's really the mama energy, and just one after another. I grew up in China, just basically hearing folk songs and my entire life, because just everyone sings in my house. Like, the only time I remember in my childhood that nobody was arguing was the three of us all singing together. So I was like, oh yeah, let's sing again, like, and like, stop talking, stop arguing, and then, oh yeah, and then everybody, no more argument. So music, yeah. So we'll do this Zoom version of what the water is wide, Wu Su Li boat song.
Neither have I wings to fly. Give me a bow that can carry two, and we shall row, my child and I.
雾苏里雾啦，南有那北，绵绵的青山，蓝蓝的水，鱼儿那个窜呐，浪儿那个飞，鹅捏在船头，它摇着宝贝。喝来喝来喝来你那，喝来喝来喝你那，来喝你那。
Oh, I wish we could play it together, but
I know.
hopefully you can hear the songs weaving themselves together.
Yeah, it's good, but it's not quite the same as doing it properly, is it? Speaking of weaving it together, we had a few questions about scales. One, how close were the classic scales of Chinese music to Western scales? And another question about the commonality of the pentatonic to music from China. And I'm not sure which exact piece of music they were referring to, but at least, Appalachian music, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The Guzheng right now is tuned in D pentatonic, is it? D, B, A, F sharp, E, D, and then repeats. And then the lowest is D, B, A, G, E, D. Because I wanted that G on the low end, on the low tone, so I can have the fourth degree for a D major. So that gives me that. So 4, 5, 1. But basically you can use Guzheng. It can play with any Western scale. All the green strings, if you can see from your camera, from my camera, is all the concert A's are colored in green color, and it's all tuned with the standard 440. This A. And it can goes to A major or flat or B flat. And Abby has a song we play a lot. Good Girl is in A major, or we can say F sharp minor. So it basically it can tune everything. There's so many shared pitches, between C, D, E, F, G, or all flats or all sharps. And when you play together, you don't have to have every single chromatic scale to pitch in that scale to mix the two songs or two sound characters together, because also I think that's a strength of the two instruments that have certain pitches missing, which is a freedom to sound instead of having everything filled, every pitch, like the piano, all clavier all together, when that really can be a lock. It can be an unlock, but it can be a lock if you don't you can't jump out of that box to use it as something else. So I think it's an advantage for instruments that don't always have those every single pitch mapped in, and then you have to, you feel like you almost like a slave to those pitches if you can't jump out, can't unleash yourself to ignore their existence, to redefine the pitches you want, rather than they're there, I need to play them, keep playing them all the time, which, sometimes just play one note, that's then enough. That's just like complete the whole thing. But whether you can actually hear that and demand that, that's the difference, I think. And then also on the left-hand side, we also use on our record, sometimes I use the completely microtones on the left-hand side. So it's another 21 pitches you could use for making music. And I think for the pentatonic scales between the Chinese pentatonic and let's say the Appalachian, I don't hear much difference. I mean, there's like the bending, I think Appalachian maybe bend a little bit like lower than F sharp, but like I would maybe bend a little sharper, and because the material that made the instruments are different. Also, the wood from Asia or the way of it's crafted from 2,000 years ago, it just has that flavor into it. Like a wok, if you cook food for hundreds of years in the wok is gonna have some Sichuan pepper smell like that. Versus using a new wok, cook the same dish, it's not gonna taste the same. So like really old banjo from Africa, that flavor is already in them. And then it brought to America, and I has added the Appalachian flavor into it. Woo, now it's a new dish. And then Guzheng is the same. It's gone through so many regions all over the map in China, from the Silk Road, probably all the way to the East Coast. So I just don't hear music in that way, that I don't hear the difference. I hear, wow, it's just the freedom of joining together. So I don't, when I play with Abby or with other musicians, I really just don't hear how can I fit in. It's like, whoa, there's a big new big dish that this is gonna taste great. Let's cook it together.
I think that's a beautiful thing, the commonality, that we share so many pitches in common, that it's only when we really need to go off the path of the commonality that we can actually get excited about and like get into the microtones of the left side of the guzheng, or the what does it sound like behind the bridge of the banjo? What can you do with these tones? But I think something that our instruments share that's in common, and this is not across the board for all banjo styles, by the way, the frailing old time tradition has really come to emphasize the beauty and purpose of open tunings. So what I mean by that is non-specifically chromatic, like liberation from the chromatic cage. It's so right now I'm up in D, so we can share some common pitches around our vocal range. But it's an A on the drone string, a D on the bottom, A in the middle, D on the second string, and then an E at the top, and I have to fret at the second fret to create the major chord. But so I've got two Ds and two As that I'm playing with constantly. And so the backdrop to anything I play in this tuning is going to be that feeling of the Ds and the As. And Faye has constant resonance of her open tuning on her instrument going all the time. And so does mine, because I'm not fretting everything. I'm staying low on the fretboard and hammering on, pulling off on the strings, and letting as much resonance from the banjo and its it's it's flavor as possible. It's ancient Thai. Its flavor comes out as much as possible. And there are different open tunings that banjo players will, especially old time banjo players will play. And mountain modal is a really common one as well. Drop D, which would be basically the same tuning, but with the bottom, with the second string tuned down. So there's so many possibilities. There's great names of different tunings, like the little satchel tuning, dead man's tuning, and they all just carry a different flavor with them. And it's exciting.
Create your own tuning. I mean, it's like someone created that tuning and then named it, but it's that someone created. It didn't just pop out from thin air. So I think I would really encourage all music lovers, just create your own tuning, detune it, and then that's yours. And then you name it.
I want to hear the Sichuan pepper tuning. Ooh. You gotta do that.
Maybe you can play that now. We have just over 10 minutes, so we have a bunch more questions, but maybe we could have a musical interlude between now and the next questions. Would you like to play something else?
What do you think? Should we do? What should we do?
Do you want to sing Hua Mulan?
Yeah, all right. I don't have the back and forth, but in front of me. But I think I can pull off.
Great. Okay, that sounds good.
So on our record, we also have this one really rocking a cappella Hunan opera track. That's called the 谁说女子不如男? Who says women aren't as good as men? It's one of the most famous Hunan opera piece in all over China that is about Mulan. She pretends as a man in the army. So it's actually an opera play, and it's been around for quite a long time, since I was a kid. And then, so at this moment, she was telling, her colleagues in the army were making jokes about women, and then Mulan dressing as a man, but says, hold it all. It's not like that at all. And here it comes. She's our son.
She's like, women are, they're killing it, and they're the reason you're able to do this out here, Yeah. So she gets into, hey, what are you wearing? Who made that? Did you make that? No, right, I don't think so.
Right. Your socks and your shirt. Who weaved the cloth? And you'll be like naked out there, like put your own clothes on. And and then when women are needed to go on the battlefield, they also went to fight as well, because there's lots of historical battles that have famous women warriors in the Chinese history also went on the battle and won the battle. So that's so this is and then we sing in Hunan opera dialect as well. I want to mention one thing. Like Abby has just really incredible linguistic talent that in our record she sings in Hunan opera dialect with me, and she sings in Suzhouese as well. So because the Chinese tradition has so deep and so long, each little region has its unique dialect and language. If it's not more than 1,000 years, at least 500 years, people just speak entirely differently and sing entirely differently. So this one is one of this one. Okay, here I go. I will start, right? Okay. 刘大哥讲啊话，噔个哩个噔个噔啊，理太偏。
谁说女子噔个哩个噔个噔？
相亲贤，男子打仗到边关。
女子纺织噔个哩个噔噔噔。
在家园，白天去种地，夜晚来放棉。
不泛昼夜是辛勤把活儿干，
将士们才能有 赤火船。
能遥不相信啊，竟往这山上看。
咱们那些火娃还有一火山，
千针万线可都是他们练呐、吼吼！
有许多女英雄是也把功劳减，
为国下的是代代出英贤。
这女儿家那一点儿不如儿男呐、哈啊哈哈哈。So that was, we always get a kick out of it. Usually really when we can travel again, when we're in your town, come see us because we can like crack the stage by singing this song. Or crack the mics.
That's actually, that song is quite a good lead into the next question from Fiona in the audience, who asks, do you have any advice for emerging women musicians? How do we keep the hope of a career alive in COVID times? That's a tough question, I have to say. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's a good question.
It is a good question. And, you know, in America, forging a career in music in general takes a lot of, unless you just hit the deal like early on in life, which I think is, that's not what I would prefer to have happen to me anyway. And it sure didn't, but it's just like, it takes grit. You just have to hang in there. And you shouldn't pursue music as a career unless you just have to, unless it's like what you have to do with your life. And if it is what you have to do, you will find a way. I'm not applying this to COVID times, but it's a rough road no matter what. But that's life. But there is no like government support or anything. You just got to hit the road, or you've got to figure out, which you can't do right now, but find ways to find streams of income and build your own little orbit around you of people who care about what you do, and a community that really you are mutually supportive with, that you can lift each other up, and, you know, create opportunity for each other, even create events together. It's got to be what you have to do. And surviving these COVID times, we're living off of savings. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. And it's a little scary. And, you know, we all have to think about the future a little differently. I'm just so grateful we have the savings to skim through this right now. I do know a lot of people who have Patreon accounts, or are just using this as like an incredible retreat, even though it's hard to see it that way. But if you can find a form of income, and then really give the rest of your time to birthing this important piece of your soul in the world, and birthing this music that you care so much about, whether it's original or you're sharing music that's been written by others, just throw yourself into it, you know? I don't know, Faye, what do you have to say?
I mean, I feel very much relate to what Abby was already saying. It is really scary time. We all are pausing and not knowing when to return, or if the CDC says it's safe, will we feel safe? You know, it's just like such an unknown time. You know what I mean? And are we going to be the you know, the type of that will get the even the anyways? But I think it's stay in, hang in there. Also be creative about income, because also we're living in a transitioning time somehow. Like, what defines a career? What is it? Like, what do you want? Do you want to be a pop star, or do you want to be like, what do you want first? And then no matter what you want that's your career, instead of what, you know, TV or what social media wants you to be, or and then just like, just go down that path. Like I have been advised by previous colleagues years ago. So, if you want to have a good music career, my advice is find a Norwegian boyfriend and then maybe marry him. And then, Norway has a lot of support. And I was like, and then I fell in love with my husband who's from South Africa. And then we lived in China, and then we came to America, which like neither of the places has any support actually to what we wanted to do. But we're still doing it, and but at this time also, as I say, emerging artists, whether you're a woman or a man, I would say start to also learn more other skills, or in terms of like finance or things that it's not a traditional way of making an income, but it's here. We're here. We need to embrace what's happening to us instead of just hanging on that one tree. Like that's the only tree I want to climb. There's actually maybe a whole forest. But if music makes you feel fulfilled and driven, and that's never going to go away. But at the same time, you also got to be smart that if you only hang on this one tree and this tree is cracking and you see it, you got to hang on another tree. And then, somehow we have two trees. So that's kind of my advice is also be creative, be innovative, be daring, be just be open to what actually means income versus what's career. And then what doesn't stop you is it doesn't necessarily define, okay, that defines who I am. I think we're in a very changing world, and the old way of thinking certain things may have been gone for good. Just define your own way. Yeah.
Okay. We have maybe about a minute left. I don't know if that's enough time. If you could run to 2 minutes to play us out with something for just a minute.
Oh, wow.
Is that a challenge?
Let's see. I could play the front part of Banjo Picking Girl, and then you could sing it in Chinese and play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
We'll give it a try.
Okay. Going around this world, baby mine. Going around this world, baby mine. Going around this world, I'm a banjo picking girl. Going around this world, baby mine. Going Tennessee, baby mine. Going Tennessee, baby mine. Going Tennessee, don't you try and follow me. Going Tennessee, baby mine. Going around this world, baby mine. Going around this world, baby mine. Going around this world, she's a good job picking girl. Going around this world, baby mine.
天涯海角走一遍，天涯海角走一遍。我弹着琴，我唱着歌去看世界。天涯海角走一遍，天涯海角走一遍，天涯海角走一遍。我弹着琴，我唱着歌去看世界。天涯海角走一遍。
Great. We've got a permission to go a little over time, so I'm just going to put a few more questions to you. One for Faye, do you play other traditional Chinese instruments or just guzheng?
I play a little bit the liuqin, the Chinese, I was a Chinese mandolin, 4 strings, also GD tuned, the size of like called a little pipa. It's about the same size of a mandolin. And then I play a little bit of sanxiao, is the traditional Chinese fretless, I would say banjo. It kind of sounds like a similar banjo sound. Yeah. And the gourd, the head is usually covered by snake skin. And my father plays that, so I actually learned some from him. So that's, and then I play a lot of drums. Just growing up from Chinese orchestra, Guzheng is like the harp in an orchestra that's very little used. You just sit there to just glissando, and then for 40 minutes, that's all you hear. So I often was put in the percussion section. So, oh, percussion needs like the little woodblock person. I was, oh, okay, I'll play the woodblock. So I play a bunch of percussion instruments as well. So that's, and I play a little bit clarinet. That's my secondary instrument in the conservatory. And then the piano.
And two questions for you, Abby. Do you use finger picks on the banjo? And how many music cases are behind you?
This is definitely our banjo stash room, and my husband is Bela Fleck. And by the way, I just want to say a huge thanks to Jeremy for doing this today. I feel like Jeremy and Bela are the other half of this team, literally. I mean, I feel like you've got this deep understanding of what we do beyond what we even understand from this like social, geographical, political perspective, cultural perspective. And my husband Bela produced our record, and he goes at it from a very musical perspective. So we are just so lucky to have these really wonderful men who are our partners in all of this. But yes, so
I'll give you the money after the Zoom call.
So I use my fingernails, and unfortunately I lost my middle fingernail yesterday in a crafting accident with my son. But so a lot of banjo pickers, like Dixieland would be with a plectrum with a pick. Bluegrass banjo, most three finger styles are with three picks. And clawhammer style, some people do attach picks to make it easier rather than or they get their nails done a lot with acrylic. But I use my natural nails at this point in time. When I'm on the road and I lose a nail, though, I immediately go to a nail shop and get an acrylic put on. But so I use the nails to strike down. And then these banjo cases. So these are not mine, actually. Bela is, a lot of people like to give Bela banjos like they make, and then he's also a collector. So we've got a nice little collection of different banjos behind me here, and things from around the world too, like the oh gosh, well, we've got gourd banjos, we've got banjo type instruments from Africa like the kanting and and ngoni. So yeah, all kinds of stuff around here. It would be a World Music Institute fun time to come down to our basement and I'll hang out here sometime.
Yeah, indeed. Wendy, I think it is, from Scotland said, "I love The Water is Wide," or "Whaley, Whaley" over here in Scotland. It shows that music transcends all boundaries. So yes. That's great. Thanks very much for letting me interview both of you. And thank you very much to WIM for this opportunity. Gabby, I see you're back.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, there is so much love in the Q&A room there for the three of you. And we want to thank everybody for joining us. I know this could have been like a 3 or 4 hour event, and we still would be engaged in a lively, wonderful conversation. Please keep following us. We will, as I said, we will send out tomorrow a link to this session that will also include links to videos, to the websites of both of the artists, so that you have your at-home package then where you can watch it one more time and enjoy it. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you again in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks. We'll be here every other week with fabulous artists such as Faye and Abby. And thank you as well, Jeremy. You did a fantastic job. And yeah, have a good evening. Goodbye.